Ever looked up at like a comet,
Yeah.
just streaking across the night sky
Hmm.
and kind of felt that like shiver of unease?
Hmm.
Or maybe like you heard a story about a child born with um, an unusual birthmark.
Right.
And you're kind of like, is that a sign of something?
Yeah.
Does that mean something more?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you wouldn't be alone,
Nope.
at least not back in 16th and 17th century England.
Yeah.
Today we are going to take a deep dive into a world where people saw signs and portents like everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Messages from God or the devil just woven into like the fabric of everyday life.
It's amazing how for
Delicate.
people living in that era, the
Yeah.
line between the natural and the supernatural was just so incredibly blurry. They really believed that God and the devil were just actively shaping their world,
Shaping their world.
sending messages through comets,
Yeah.
eclipses, unusual births.
Even the weather.
Yeah, even the weather.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We're basing our exploration today on a conversation between Professor Susanna Lipscomb
Oh, wonderful.
and historian Alexandra Walsham,
Yes.
who has spent years uncovering these just captivating stories from historical archives.
Yeah, like stepping into a time machine and
Yeah.
seeing the world through a totally different lens.
Completely different lens.
Yeah.
One of the things that just struck me as I was reading through this material is how often these signs and wonders were interpreted negatively.
Yes.
Like a comet suddenly appearing
Right.
in the night sky, an eclipse darkening the sun in midday,
Yeah.
or even like an animal born with unusual features.
Right.
Like these were often seen as bad omens.
Oh, absolutely. Warnings of impending doom or
Right.
divine punishment, they're being punished.
Yeah, and I was reading about this one case from 1566 that really caught my attention.
Okay.
A cuttlefish, of all things,
Oh, wow.
was caught off the coast of the Netherlands.
Okay.
And it wasn't just your average cuttlefish.
Right.
People described it as having like a parrot's beak,
Uh-huh.
owl-like eyes,
Wow.
and a four-cornered red tail that reminded them of a Catholic bishop's hat.
Oh, my goodness. Of course, in the context of the Protestant Reformation,
Right.
this wasn't just seen as a strange biological anomaly.
Mhm.
This was a direct attack on the Catholic Church,
Yeah.
a symbol of its perceived corruption
Hmm.
and moral decay. This bizarre cuttlefish
Yeah.
became this powerful piece of propaganda
Wow.
in the ongoing religious and political struggles of the time.
It really makes you think about how even something seemingly innocuous like a sea creature
Right.
can be drawn into these larger narratives and anxieties.
Absolutely.
Now, astrology also played a huge role in all of this, right?
Oh, huge, yeah.
People believed that the stars
Mm-hmm.
held the key to understanding the future, almost like a cosmic blueprint.
Absolutely. But the Protestant Reformation just added this fascinating layer of complexity to this whole thing. Because while many people accepted astrology
Yeah.
as a tool created by God to guide humanity,
Right.
there was also a growing concern
About
about giving the stars too much power.
interesting.
It raised all these questions about free will versus predestination.
Oh, that's interesting.
Are we truly in control of our destinies, or are we just puppets dancing to the tune of the cosmos?
And those kinds of questions
Right.
weren't just theoretical debates for theologians.
Oh, no.
They had real political implications.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially when you consider the possibility of astrologers predicting things like the death of a king
Right.
or the outcome of a war.
Yeah,
That could easily lead to unrest and instability.
exactly. Specific predictions, especially those that challenged authority or threatened the established order,
Right.
were seen as extremely dangerous. So you had this really interesting tension, this widespread belief in the power of astrology,
Yeah.
but also a deep fear of its potential to disrupt society.
So when the Protestant Reformation swept through Europe,
Yeah.
you might assume that it would have swept away these older beliefs in omens and prophecies.
Right.
Sort of like a clean break from the past.
You would think so.
Right.
Yeah, not quite.
How are-
It's more complicated than that.
Okay.
Professor Walsham points out that while the Protestants might have rejected Catholic rituals and doctrines,
Right.
they didn't abandon the idea that God was actively communicating with humanity through unusual events.
So they're still looking for signs.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
still looking for the messages.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could argue that they doubled down on this belief.
Okay.
They truly believed that they were living in the end times,
Mm-hmm.
a world just charged with spiritual significance,
Mm-hmm.
where every unusual event could be a sign of God's favor or wrath.
Professor Walsham uses this fantastic quote.
Yes.
This is not a disenchanted world in any sense of the term.
I love that.
It's such a great quote.
Yeah.
They might have reformed the church,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't abandon the search for meaning and
Oh.
divine purpose in the world around them.
Yeah, they were looking for it everywhere.
Yeah.
They were looking for it everywhere.
And one of the most unsettling manifestations of this belief system
Yeah.
was the idea of monstrous births.
Yes.
It's a difficult topic to approach from a modern perspective,
Mm-hmm.
but it's essential for understanding this era.
Yeah.
We're talking about children born with physical deformities.
And instead of seeing these through the lens of medicine or genetics, as we might today,
Right.
they were interpreted as divine judgments,
Right.
signs of sin, either on the part of the parents or even society as a whole.
Right.
It's a stark reminder
Yeah.
of how differently they viewed the world.
Than we do today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hard to imagine, like, the fear and the stigma
I know.
surrounding those children and their families.
Yeah.
And you mentioned as exploitation, too.
Oh, yeah.
Professor Walsham talks about how these children were sometimes, like, put on display,
Right.
treated as spectacles for profit.
It is a heartbreaking aspect of this belief system.
Yeah.
A reminder of how fear and superstition can be exploited for personal gain.
Right.
However,
Yeah.
it's important to note that not everyone
Mhm.
saw these children as objects of horror or sources of revenue.
Yeah.
Professor Walsham highlights a more compassionate interpretation that
Mhm.
was also circulating at the time.
Okay, what was that?
Well, some people argued that these children weren't being punished for their own sins,
Okay.
but they were messengers of God's anger at the sins of society as a whole.
Interesting.
So instead of blaming the individual,
Mm-hmm.
they saw these children as a collective wake-up call,
Oh, wow.
urging people to repent and reform their ways.
So it was less about individual blame
Yeah,
and more about a societal reckoning.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a really complex and nuanced perspective.
It is.
And it challenges us to consider, like, the full range of beliefs and
Yeah.
interpretations that existed within this historical context.
Absolutely. And it's
Yeah.
so easy to just dismiss these people as superstitious or cruel. They were grappling with these profound questions
Mhm.
about life, death, fate,
Right.
the nature of the divine,
Mhm.
and their attempts to make sense of the world, however flawed they may seem to us now,
Right.
reveal a deep longing for meaning and connection.
And this desire to find meaning extended beyond just interpreting unusual events.
Yeah.
It also manifested in the belief in prophecy,
Yes.
the idea that God could communicate directly with individuals and reveal his plans for the future.
And you know, this belief wasn't limited to the fringes of society.
Okay.
It touched all levels,
Oh, wow.
from the poorest peasant to the highest echelons of power.
Mm-hmm.
Professor Walsham discusses this really fascinating case of William Hackett,
Oh.
an illiterate man who believed he was Jesus Christ.
Wait, he actually believed he was Jesus.
He did.
That's a pretty bold claim.
It is a bold claim, and
Yeah.
what makes Hackett's story even more intriguing is that he wasn't just some harmless eccentric.
Right.
He had a following,
Okay.
and his radical Puritan beliefs led him to advocate for a complete overthrow of the existing religious and political order.
Wow.
He wanted to get rid of bishops
Really?
and fundamentally change the power structure of the Church of England.
So he was using his prophetic claims to push for some pretty radical
Yeah.
social and political change.
Big
No wonder the authorities took him seriously.
Exactly. In 1591, he was executed as a traitor,
Wow.
which shows just how seriously the authorities viewed these prophetic claims,
Right.
especially when they challenged the established order.
Yeah.
Hackett's story highlights the intersection of prophecy, religion, and politics in this era.
It makes you wonder, though, how widespread these beliefs really were.
Yeah.
I mean, most of what we know about this period comes from written sources,
Right.
which were primarily produced by the elite right.
Yeah.
So how can we be sure that ordinary people shared these beliefs about prophecy and divine intervention?
That's a great question. It's easy to fall into the trap of assuming that the historical record reflects the experiences and beliefs of everyone.
Right.
However, Professor Walsham encourages us to read between the lines of those sources to uncover the often hidden stories and perspectives of everyday people.
So it's like a detective story.
It is.
Like you're looking for clues
Yeah.
and you're piecing together a more complete picture of the past.
Precisely.
Wow.
And she gives this example of 11-year-old William Withers,
Okay.
who was also considered a prophet.
Wow.
His story echoes this biblical idea of God speaking through the mouths of babes,
Mhm.
suggesting that even children were drawn into this culture of prophecy and divine intervention.
That's incredible.
It is.
A child prophet.
Yeah,
It really makes you think about how deeply embedded these beliefs were
absolutely.
in the fabric of society. If a child could be seen as a conduit for divine messages,
Right.
then it seems like no one was immune to this way of thinking.
From prominent figures like William Hackett to an 11-year-old boy, the belief in prophets and divine messages seems to have touched every level of society.
Mhm.
It was a powerful force that shaped how people understood their world and their place within it.
You know, it's so fascinating to think that just a few centuries ago, people saw the world so differently.
Yeah,
It really makes you wonder
it does.
if maybe we've lost something
Yeah,
by dismissing these kinds of beliefs altogether.
yeah.
I mean, maybe there's some value
Right.
in looking for deeper meaning in the world around us, even if we don't attribute it to supernatural forces.
I think that's a really great point.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's not about going back to a time of fearing comets and monstrous births,
Right.
but about reclaiming a sense of wonder and awe at the natural world.
Mm.
Maybe we can learn to appreciate the mysteries and complexities of life
Yeah.
without feeling the need to explain everything through like a supernatural lens.
Right. We don't have to believe in prophecies to appreciate the power of nature.
Yeah.
The interconnectedness of all things, or the sheer vastness of the universe.
Exactly.
We think about all the things that we take for granted today.
Right.
Things that would seem like miracles to someone living in the 16th century.
Absolutely.
Imagine trying to explain the internet or smartphones or even like modern medicine
Right.
to someone from that era.
I know.
Their minds would be blown.
It would be blown.
But it also highlights how our understanding of the world is constantly evolving.
Constantly.
What we consider normal or rational today
Right.
might have seemed utterly fantastical or even terrifying to our ancestors.
Yeah, for sure.
It's almost like we've traded a sense of wonder
Yeah.
for a sense of certainty.
I like that.
And while science has given us these like incredible insights into the workings of the universe,
Right.
maybe there's still room for a little mystery and awe in our lives.
I think you hit on something really important there.
Yeah.
Perhaps the key is to find a balance between the rational and the intuitive, between the scientific and the spiritual.
You?
We can embrace the knowledge and the advancements of our time
Right.
while still remaining open to the possibility that there are things we don't fully understand,
All right.
things that might even transcend our current understanding of the world.
You know, this deep dive has really given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
It's been so fascinating to explore how our ancestors viewed the world
Yeah.
and to consider how those beliefs, however different they may seem to us now,
Right.
shaped their lives and experiences.
It challenges us to examine our own beliefs
Right.
and assumptions.
Yeah.
What do we hold to be true today
Yeah.
that future generations might find perplexing or even unbelievable? It's a humbling thought
It is.
and a reminder that the search for meaning and understanding is an ongoing journey.
So to our listener out there,
Yes.
we want to hear from you.
We do.
What resonated with you from this deep dive? How do you make sense of the unexpected or the unusual events in your own life? Share your thoughts with us.
Yeah.
We'd love to keep this conversation going.
Absolutely. Exploring the mysteries of the world, both past and present, is an adventure best shared.
And that wraps up our deep dive into the world of prophecy, portents, and prodigies in 16th and 17th century England.
Fascinating.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those minds open.